Your skin color isn't random. It's one of the most powerful evolutionary adaptations in human history, and the science behind it will completely change how you see yourself and everyone around you. Let's start. Very fair skin represents the absolute extreme of depigmentation. Found in populations from Ireland, Scandinavia, and the Baltic regions, this skin appears milky white or translucent, often showing visible veins beneath the surface. The melanin levels here have dropped to the bare minimum necessary for cellular function, and the reason is brutal in its simplicity. These populations evolved in environments where UV radiation becomes so scarce during winter months that any melanin barrier, no matter how slight, could mean the difference between adequate vitamin D levels and deficiency diseases. Research examining ancient DNA from these populations reveals something shocking. This extreme depigmentation happened relatively recently in evolutionary terms, within the last 5,000 to 10,000 years. It wasn't a gradual drift, it was rapid natural selection responding to environmental pressure. As humans migrated into post-glacial northern Europe, those individuals with lighter pigmentation survived at dramatically higher rates than those with darker skin. The selection pressure was so intense that populations shifted from moderate pigmentation to very fair skin in perhaps only a few hundred generations. When we reach light golden brown skin, we're looking at populations from the Mediterranean, North Africa, and parts of South Asia, regions where distinct seasons create dramatically different UV exposure patterns. Research tracking vitamin D synthesis found this is the sweet spot where protection and production balance almost perfectly. During summer months with abundant sunshine, this skin maintains adequate melanin to prevent burning and protect folate. But here's the key. As autumn arrives and UV intensity drops, that same pigmentation level allows efficient vitamin D production without the need for dramatic adaptation. Scientists studying populations around the Mediterranean discovered something unexpected. This phenotype can adjust melanin production seasonally with remarkable speed. Expose this skin to summer sun and it tans quickly, building a temporary shield. Reduce UV exposure in winter and the melanin concentration decreases, maximizing whatever limited sunlight reaches the skin. It's a dynamic system evolved for climates where extremes alternate throughout the year. Olive-toned skin might be the most genetically diverse phenotype on the spectrum. Found across southern Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of the Andes, this skin is distinctive for its neutral base with greenish, yellow, or gray undertones that seem to shift in different lighting. Genetic studies reveal why. These populations sit at crossroads where human migration mixed genes from multiple ancestral groups. The moderate melanin levels provide a compromise, enough protection for sunny summers, but light enough for vitamin D synthesis during cloudy winters. But there's something extraordinary about the neutral undertones. Research suggests they create a kind of optical camouflage effect, making the skin appear darker in bright light and lighter in shade. This isn't aesthetic, it's functional. By appearing to adjust with ambient light levels, olive skin optimizes both UV protection and vitamin D production across varying conditions. Scientists studying populations with this phenotype found they maintain stable vitamin D levels across a wider range of environmental conditions than any other skin type. Warm beige skin evolved in regions with pronounced seasonal cycles, places where populations faced long periods of weak sunlight followed by intense summer sun. Found in southern and eastern Europe, parts of Latin America, and West Asia, this phenotype required a completely different strategy. The melanin levels drop significantly compared to darker tones, which poses risks under strong UV, but provides massive advantages in low-light conditions. Here's what makes this adaptation so critical. Research on vitamin D synthesis shows that populations living at higher latitudes face a genuine survival threat from deficiency. Without adequate vitamin D, bones soften in a condition called rickets. The immune system weakens, and mortality rates spike, especially in children. A study examining skeletal remains from medieval Europe found evidence of widespread rickets in populations that migrated north before their pigmentation adapted. Warm beige skin evolved specifically to prevent this. The reduced melanin allows UV penetration sufficient for vitamin D production even during the weak sunlight of spring and autumn. But there's a trade-off. This skin burns more easily than darker phenotypes. The evolutionary solution? These populations developed an enhanced tanning response. Expose warm beige skin to summer sun, and it rapidly produces additional melanin, creating a temporary protective layer. As winter approaches and UV drops, that tan fades, resetting the skin for maximum vitamin D absorption. It's a seasonal adaptation encoded in melanocyte response patterns. Fair light skin takes this adaptation even further. Found primarily in Central and Northern Europe, this phenotype evolved in regions where sunlight becomes genuinely scarce for much of the year. The melanin concentration here drops to minimal levels, giving skin a pale beige or pinkish appearance. And the evolutionary pressure that drove this is stark. Research on vitamin D synthesis at high latitudes shows that with limited UV exposure, darker skin literally cannot produce enough of this critical nutrient. Scientists studying populations from these regions discovered that fair skin allows approximately 5 times more UV penetration than the darkest skin types. In environments where winter days last only a few hours and the sun hangs low on the horizon, this isn't a minor advantage, it's the difference between survival and death. Medieval records document devastating bone diseases in populations that migrated to northern latitudes without adequate time for pigmentation adaptation. Fair light skin maximizes every available photon of UV light, converting it into essential vitamin D even under overcast skies. The vulnerability to sunburn isn't a design flaw, it's an acceptable risk. In Northern Europe, traditional populations rarely encountered UV radiation intense enough to cause dangerous burning. The adaptation optimized for scarcity, not abundance. Deep ebony skin. This represents the absolute pinnacle of melanin production in humans. We're talking about skin tones found predominantly in populations from East Africa, particularly among Nilotic groups living near the equator. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that this skin contains such high concentrations of eumelanin that it blocks approximately 95% of harmful ultraviolet radiation from penetrating to deeper skin layers. Think about that for a second. Your body created a biological shield so effective it rivals modern sunscreen technology. But here's where it gets fascinating. Scientists discovered the real evolutionary driver wasn't just preventing sunburn. A groundbreaking study in 2000 revealed that UV radiation destroys folate, a B vitamin absolutely critical for DNA synthesis and cell division. Sperm production fails in males and fertility plummets. Dark pigmentation evolved primarily to protect this vital nutrient in the blood vessels beneath the skin. In regions where the sun blazes overhead year-round with maximum intensity, populations without this adaptation simply couldn't maintain reproductive success. The melanin acts as a protective barrier, ensuring folate levels stay high enough for healthy pregnancies and viable offspring. Now watch what happens when we move to rich dark brown skin. This phenotype emerged in West Africa and parts of South Asia, where UV exposure remains intense but becomes slightly more variable with seasons and weather patterns. The melanin concentration here is marginally lower than deep ebony tones, which creates an interesting evolutionary advantage. According to research from the Smithsonian's Human Origins Program, this slight reduction allows the body to begin producing more vitamin D when sunlight does penetrate the skin. It's a biological compromise, maintaining strong UV protection while giving the body flexibility to respond to environmental changes. Scientists examining populations in these regions found something remarkable. The skin maintains enough melanin density to prevent folate degradation during peak sun exposure, But the melanocytes distribute melanosomes slightly differently than in the darkest phenotypes. Research published in 2022 shows this distribution pattern allows approximately 20% more UV penetration than deep ebony skin, just enough to kickstart vitamin D synthesis during periods of cloud cover or seasonal variation, without compromising protection during intense exposure. Mahogany brown skin tells an even more complex story. Found across Melanesia, parts of South Asia, and populations shaped by centuries of migration, this tone demonstrates evolution's precision engineering. Studies analyzing photoprotection levels show this pigmentation blocks around 70 to 80% of UV radiation, a significant decrease from darker phenotypes, but still vastly more protective than lighter skin. The reddish or copper undertones you see aren't just aesthetic. They indicate the presence of both eumelanin and trace amounts of pheomelanin working together. Here's what researchers discovered. This skin type evolved in tropical and subtropical zones where populations needed protection from still intense sunlight, but also required more efficient vitamin D production because UV levels weren't constant throughout the year. The adjustment is so precise that individuals with mahogany brown skin can tan rapidly and evenly. A response triggered by UV-damaged DNA sending signals to melanocytes to produce more protective melanin. It's your body recognizing threat and adapting in real time. But here's what ties everything together. Modern genomic studies have revealed that all humans, regardless of skin color, share the same number of melanocytes, the cells that produce pigment. What differs isn't the quantity of pigment-producing cells, but their activity level and how they package and distribute melanin. A study published in 2023 found that specific genetic variants in genes controlling melanin synthesis, melanosome transfer, and tyrosinase activity account for the entire spectrum of human skin tones. We're looking at the same basic biological machinery, just calibrated differently by hundreds of thousands of years of natural selection. The most mind-blowing discovery? Skin color is one of the fastest evolving traits in the human genome. Research comparing populations that migrated to different latitudes shows pigmentation can shift dramatically in as few as 5,000 to 10,000 years. That's evolutionary speed comparable to antibiotic resistance in bacteria. It demonstrates just how powerful the selective pressure from UV radiation truly is. And here's the final twist that changes everything. Recent studies examining vitamin D metabolism genes discovered that populations didn't just adapt through pigmentation changes. Some groups evolved enhanced sensitivity to vitamin D at the cellular level, allowing them to maintain health with lower vitamin D concentrations. Others developed more efficient vitamin D transport proteins. Evolution didn't just paint us different colors, it rewired our entire relationship with sunlight at the molecular level. Your skin tone isn't just about appearance. It's a biological record of where your ancestors lived, what challenges they faced, and how they survived. Every shade tells a story of human adaptation written in melanin and genetics, a story 200,000 years in the making. That's what science reveals when we look deeper than the surface.